Some claim that President Obama already has necessary authorization for military action against the Islamic State. But others say the president must gain new approval from Congress in order to continue U.S. campaigns in Iraq and Syria. Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia is one of those leading the call for more engagement from Congress and for a new vote on authorization. He participated in a discussion of the issue during a recent Wilson Center event. That's the focus of this edition of Rewind.
Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution says, quote, Congress shall have the power to declare war, unquote. But up to this point, this Congress has been AWOL. Though the President has decided to seek a new authorization to use military force, AUMF, his administration insists that the old authorizations apply too.
There is a symbiotic pathology between executive overreach and congressional abdication that has put us in a situation where presidents like President Obama, you can go all the way back, are more prone to start things unilaterally without Congress. I'm under no illusion that a better process will make these decisions easy, far from it. But not having a process takes hard and consequential decisions and makes them even harder. And so Senator McCain and I have a bill called the War Powers Consultation Act of 2014 that tries to take the dialogue process, define what in fact is a war in the 21st century that would trigger consultation and voting, cyber attacks, drones, non-state actors, what is a war? Second, defines what consultation is so that a president can't say, I consulted with Congress when he just calls one person. Mm-hmm. And third, defines what voting requirements would be, and so that Congress would have to be on the board and do their job.
Isn't this debate arguably too late? And by doing this now, is this mostly about the president's legacy? Does it then set a precedent for other presidents? Weigh in on how important it is to act even though the war is already underway. And if you get through the lame duck session, you get into the new year, we're talking 6-12 months before you have an actual vote on this.
Right. I don't think it's too late. Obviously, it's not too late. It can happen. And it would be very important for the president to go to Congress and for Congress to give him the authorization not just to use force against the Islamic State, but also, as Senator Kaine said, to update the 2001 authorization and to give that contemporary approval and legitimacy and to figure out some of the complicated issues that have arisen. The president also has kind of by accident developed the most extraordinarily aggressive war powers legacy. He's used force in humanitarian contexts that have never been done before. He's done things that have really gutted the central provisions of the War Powers Resolution. He expanded the 2001 AUMF when he said he wanted to contract it. All of those things will be on his record, and all of it can be cleaned up, so to speak, for his legacy if we can work out these issues.
Right. Jane, you brought up something, al-Nusra is another enemy there, but also remember the old enemy in Syria is Assad. We used to talk about his days are numbered. Will an AUMF, perhaps I'd ask the senator, but I'm curious what the others think, include, because this also gets to your point, what is the strategy? Is it just about them? Do you then pivot later to taking down the Assad regime? Do we deal with that issue now, or is that down the road?
People say that they don't like that the president set a red line and didn't honor it. I think the president did exactly what he said he would do with respect to the red line on chemical weapons. If you use them, we're going to take action. We did. There was a diplomatic follow-on. The chemical weapons stockpile has been destroyed. I think the president did what he said he would do there, but what the president should not have said, I don't think we should be in the business of saying Assad must go or others must go. We don't set the timetable. We still don't set the timetable of a regime change for another nation. I think we should be out of the regime change business. And so I don't think a front on, we got to change Assad out, should be part of this authorization.
The war against ISIS, ISIL is the biggest new war. There's still lots of troops on the ground in Afghanistan, but it's not the only one. You have drone strikes going on in Pakistan, in Yemen, in Somalia. We had military forces deployed around Nigeria just doing ISR, but when you had the missing girls, there are a lot of places where the U.S. is killing people right now. Professor Goldsmith, this would deal with the ISIS issue. Do you need other authorizations for these other they're called pinpoint, but they're pretty extensive actions?
The operations in Yemen and Somalia and in Pakistan and Afghanistan, those are all premised on the 2001 AUMF or some combination of that and the President's Article 2 powers. And yes, for all the reasons we've stated, both in terms of refreshing the authorities, having the public debate about whether we should be doing those things. And also, I believe, for putting some procedural requirements on the president so he can tell the American people exactly who are we at war with in all these places and where.
But I think people are looking for a strategy, an overarching strategy, not just let's list this group and over here and some group over there. How are we going to win? May be an overstatement, but how are we going to win the argument with some kid trying to decide whether to strap on a suicide vest in the boonies of Yemen? How are we going to win that argument?
Here's how war has now evolved in this country. You can start it without Congress. You can fund it on the credit card. Even in Vietnam, as unpopular as it was, we taxed ourselves to pay for at least part of it. Some of it was deficit funded. But now, Iraq and Afghanistan, all on the credit card. The decision makers' kids are not likely to serve. In the era of the draft, at least the decision makers' kids, if they were male, were likely to serve. And to the extent it's real controversial, but we have private contractors now that we can just contract to do things that we don't have to ask the military to do. Each of those moves, no vote, on the credit card, your kids don't have to serve, we can get contractors to do it, together, come together to suggest a grave danger that we're sort of outsourcing the moral responsibility of sober decision making that the framers talked about when they set up the Constitution the way they did.
For more information on this and other national and global issues, visit wilsoncenter.org.